you shouldn't have listened.
The first time the closet door breathed, I thought the heater had kicked on. That sounds stupid, but it's the kind of stupid you need at the beginning. The kind of stupid that keeps your brain from having to name what's actually happening. I was folding towels on my bed, half watching the light change outside as afternoon turned to early winter dusk, and I heard this soft, steady sound from the corner of the room. Not a rattle, not a creak. A slow inhale, then a slow exhale, like someone trying to breathe quietly through their nose. I sat still with a towel in my hands, waiting for the furnace to cycle again, waiting for the house to settle. The sound continued. When I stood up, it stopped instantly, like it was holding its breath because I'd noticed. I didn't walk to the closet. I didn't even look directly at it. I stood there facing my bed, staring at the pile of folded towels like they were suddenly the most important thing in the world. And I told myself I'd imagined it. That I'd been tired, that the dry air was doing weird things with the ducts. Then I heard the tiniest movement behind the closet door, like fabric shifting, and I dropped the towel. I live in a rental townhouse in Colorado. It's a narrow place, 2 levels, built close to the next one, a shared wall that makes you feel like your neighbors are in the same building even when you never see them. The kind of place that creaks when the temperature drops. The kind of place where you hear water move through pipes and you don't think twice about it. My bedroom is on the 2nd floor, at the top of the small carpeted staircase. It's a basic room, bed against one wall, dresser on the opposite side, a narrow window that faces the back of the complex, and that closet in the corner. One sliding door, cheap track, a little stiff when it's cold. I moved there at the end of October. I needed something smaller and quieter after a breakup that had left my life feeling like it was full of noise I couldn't control. The lease was simple, the landlord seemed normal, and the place looked clean enough. I didn't want a dream home. I wanted a place where nothing happened. It's always the people who want nothing who end up with everything. The first 2 weeks were fine. Boxes unpacked slowly, a coffee maker on the counter, a couple of winter candles. The normal rituals people use to convince themselves a new space belongs to them. By early November, the temperature started dropping hard at night. The complex parking lot would sparkle with frost in the mornings. The air had that sharp smell it gets when snow is coming but hasn't yet. And my townhouse started doing what old townhouses do, popping and settling. Little noises in the walls, the occasional groan from the floorboards. All of that was normal. What wasn't normal was the closet. It started with the door being open. Not wide, not someone rummaged through it, just open enough that the edge of the door wasn't fully covering the frame, a crack of darkness, a thin line, like the closet was peeking. The first morning I noticed it, I assumed I hadn't closed it all the way the night before. I slid it shut and went downstairs. The second morning, it was cracked again. I slid it shut and told myself the track was crooked. Cheap rentals have cheap fixes. If you don't want to go insane, you accept that. The third morning, it was open wider, 2 inches. I stood in the doorway with my coffee and stared at it. My house was quiet. My windows were locked. My front door was locked. I could see the stairs behind me, empty. I slid the door shut harder than necessary. That afternoon, I noticed my shirts were hanging differently. I don't mean someone rearranged my closet. I mean the hangers were turned the wrong way. Like someone had slid a shirt off the rod and then put it back on, but didn't understand my tiny personal habit of facing all the hooks the same direction. It was such a small detail that for a full minute I tried to convince myself I was wrong about my own habit. That maybe I never did that. But I do. I've done it since college, It's an anxious little ritual that makes a space feel orderly. Seeing the hangers wrong made my stomach tighten like someone had pressed a thumb into a bruise. I told myself it was the movers, even though I'd moved myself. I told myself it was settling, even though settling doesn't rotate hangers. I told myself anything that let me keep living like this was a normal apartment. Then came the breathing. That afternoon, the sound came back, soft, steady inhale and exhale from behind the closet door. I was folding towels again because I'm the kind of person who repeats routines when I'm stressed. It's how I make myself feel safe. The sound was quiet enough that I could have ignored it. I tried. I kept folding, kept staring at my hands, kept telling myself it was the heater. But the rhythm was too human, not mechanical, not random, consistent, controlled. I took one step toward the closet. Silence. I stood still. The breathing resumed, slower now, like whoever or whatever was doing it had realized I'd move if it pushed too hard. I felt my throat tighten. I remember thinking, not, there is something in my closet, but I don't want this to become real. Because once you let yourself believe it, you can't go back. I didn't open the closet. I didn't slide the door. I left the room and went downstairs and turned on every light in the living room. And I stayed down there until bedtime like a child refusing to go into a dark hallway. That night, I slept with my bedroom light on. I woke up around 2:30 a.m., not because of a loud noise, but because I felt crowded. Like the air in the room had changed density. My eyes opened to the bright lamp beside the bed. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Then I heard the closet door move. Not sliding, just a tiny shift in the track, like someone had put their fingers on it and tested it. I held my breath and listened. A slow inhale from the closet, a slow exhale. My skin prickled. I lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound to stop. It didn't. After a full minute, I whispered, "Stop." The breathing stopped instantly. I didn't sleep again that night. I watched the closet door until my eyes burned. When morning finally came and the gray daylight seeped through the blinds, I got out of bed like my body belonged to someone else. I slid the closet door open with my hand shaking. Nothing. Clothes, shoes, a couple of boxes still not unpacked, an empty corner where the vacuum stood. Normal. But the air inside the closet was colder than the air in the room. A pocket of cold so sharp it made my breath fog when I leaned in. I pulled back and stared at it, confused. Then I noticed something else. My coats, heavy winter coats, were gently swaying, as if someone had just brushed past them. The closet was still. No fan, no vent. I stepped away and shut the door. That was the first time I thought, very clearly, I should move. But you can't just move because your closet is cold. You can't call your landlord and say, "I think something is breathing in the upstairs bedroom." You can't tell friends without watching their eyes change, the subtle shift from concern to pity. So I did what people do when they feel powerless. I tried to control it. I cleaned. I reorganized. I placed things in my closet with deliberate precision, like I was staking a claim. Shoes aligned, boxes stacked, hangers corrected. I even put a small battery-operated scent pouch in there to erase the damp fabric smell that had started to linger near the door. The smell was faint but persistent, like old laundry and metal. For 2 days after that, nothing happened. I started to feel foolish again. I started to tell myself I'd worked myself up because I'd been lonely and stressed. On the third day, I came home from work and the closet door was open halfway. Not cracked, not slightly off track. Halfway. A black rectangle in the corner of my room. The lamp was off. The room was dim. The closet looked deeper than it should have, like the darkness inside wasn't just shadow, but thickness. I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand, and waited for some rational thought to arrive and save me. None did. I walked into the room slowly, every nerve expecting something to jump out. I reached for the closet door, grabbed the edge, and slid it shut. When it closed, the air in the room changed. It felt like when you close a window on a windy day and the pressure shifts. Then, from behind the door, I heard the softest sound of cloth dragging across cloth, like someone turning in a tight space. I stepped back. My chest felt tight. I whispered, "No," without meaning to. The closet door slid open 2 inches by itself. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough to show that line of darkness again. Then it stopped. I stared at it for a long time, my mind insisting this couldn't be happening, my body insisting it was. I crossed the room, grabbed the vacuum from the closet, and pulled it out like I was going to clean, like I was too busy for haunting nonsense. When I reached in, my fingers brushed the back wall of the closet, and I felt something. Not a hand, not a face, a vibration. Like the wall was humming faintly, like something behind it was breathing through the drywall. I yanked my hand back so hard I scraped my knuckles on the door frame. I ran downstairs, locked the front door even though it was already locked, and sat on my couch in full daylight, shaking, telling myself to be normal. That night, I slept downstairs. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got my head straight, just until I stopped imagining things. At around 1 a.m., while I lay on the couch under a blanket, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate. Not the house settling, not a creak. A step, then another, spaced like someone walking across carpet. I held my breath. The footsteps moved toward the top of the stairs, then stopped. The silence that followed felt like someone standing there, just out of sight, listening. Then the upstairs closet door slid open. I could hear it from downstairs, that soft, gritty track sound like plastic sliding on cheap metal. My mouth went dry. The hair on my arms lifted. Then I heard breathing, not upstairs, not muffled, breathing in the stairwell, close. Like someone was crouched on the steps just around the turn where the stairs bend, breathing carefully in the dark. I sat up slowly, blanket clutched in my fist. The breathing stopped. Then, in the silence, I heard the closet door upstairs slide shut again. I didn't go up there. The next morning, I went up with daylight and the courage daylight gives you. The closet door was shut. Everything looked normal, except the floor in front of the closet. There was a line of dampness on the carpet, like a wet hem had dragged across it. It led from the closet to the edge of the room and stopped. No footprints, no trail, just that smear of moisture that dried slowly over an hour. I pressed my fingers into it. Cold. Not spilled water, not a leak from the ceiling. Cold. Like snow. That's when I started staying away from the bedroom entirely. I set up camp downstairs. I moved my laptop to the dining table. I put a pillow on the couch. I tried to convince myself I could live on the first floor until the lease ended. But the thing about living around something is that it teaches it where your boundaries are. And boundaries invite pressure. A week later, I came home on a Friday night with takeout and a small grocery bag. It was snowing lightly, the kind of snow that makes everything look soft and harmless. I stepped inside, kicked off boots, and set the food on the counter. Then I saw the kitchen cabinet door under the sink. Open. Not wide, just cracked. I shut it without thinking. It opened again immediately. A slow swing, as if pushed from inside. My stomach dropped. I stepped back and stared at the cabinet. My mind offered an explanation. Maybe the hinge is loose, maybe it's warped. Then from inside the cabinet, I heard the same breathing. Soft inhale, soft exhale. I backed away until I hit the opposite counter. My hands shook. The cabinet door swung wider, like it was inviting me to look. I didn't. Instead, I went to the front door and checked the lock twice, like locking the door could keep something from moving inside your own house. I spent that night sitting at my dining table with every light on, listening to the house. No footsteps, no knocks, just every so often the soft whisper of a cabinet door shifting under the sink, like something settling itself inside. The next day I called my landlord. I told him I thought there was a pest problem. I chose that word because it made me sound practical, not crazy. He came that afternoon with a tool bag and an expression that said he'd rather be doing anything else. He checked the cabinet hinges, tightened them, shrugged. "Old place," he said. "Wood moves with temperature." I nodded like that was a comfort. He asked if everything else was okay. I almost told him about the closet, the cold pocket, the breathing. But he was already halfway out the door, and I couldn't bring myself to put those words in the air. After he left, I stood in the kitchen staring at the cabinet door, telling myself I'd just made a fool of myself. The cabinet stayed shut all day. That night, I woke up upstairs. I don't remember deciding to sleep in my bedroom again. I think exhaustion finally overruled fear. I think I told myself I needed to reclaim the space. I remember lying in bed with the lamp on, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the breathing to start. It didn't. At some point, my eyes closed. I woke to pressure on the mattress beside my hip. Not a full body weight, more like someone kneeling on the bed. The mattress dipped and held. I froze, every muscle clenched. The air in the room smelled damp and metallic. I didn't turn my head. A slow inhale from the closet, a slow exhale. The mattress pressure shifted, like whatever was on the bed adjusted its knee closer. Then I felt something brush my hair. Not a tug, not a grab. A slow stroke, like fingers combing one strand. I whimpered, a tiny involuntary sound. The brushing stopped. The closet door slid open 3 inches. I could hear it, that soft track sound, too close. Then the bed pressure lifted. I lay there shaking for a long time, then finally turned my head toward the closet. The door was open a crack. Inside, the darkness looked wrong, like it was deeper than the closet should be. And in that crack of darkness, I saw something pale shift. Not a face, a hand. Small, pale fingers curling around the edge of the door from inside. Then it was gone. I screamed. I jumped out of bed, hit the lamp switch hard, flooding the room with bright light. The closet door was shut again. I stood there, trembling, staring at it. Then, very softly, from behind the closet door, I heard a single knock. Tap. Not on the door, on the wall, inside the closet, like someone knocking from within. I ran downstairs and didn't go back up until morning. From that point on, the house didn't wait for me to come near the closet. It started leaving evidence in places that forced me to acknowledge it. My laundry basket would be moved from the bathroom to the bottom of the stairs. My shoes would be turned so the toes faced inward, like they'd been lined up by someone with a strange sense of order. Once I came home to find every cabinet door in the kitchen open, just slightly, all at the same uniform angle, like a display. The worst was the smell. It would come in waves, as if the house itself exhaled damp cloth and pennies. I stopped inviting anyone over. I stopped telling myself I could keep living like this and just ignore it. But I still didn't have a plan. Then the winter storm hit. It was late January, one of those storms that turns the world into white noise. Heavy snow, wind pushing drifts against doors, the kind of cold that makes your windows crackle. Work was canceled. Roads were terrible. I was stuck inside, alone. By early afternoon, the house felt too quiet. The muffled sound of snow outside made everything feel sealed. I decided to clean. Again. Cleaning is what I do when I can't control something. I went upstairs with a trash bag and started going through old boxes in the closet because that felt like an act of defiance. Like if I filled the closet with my own decisions, it couldn't belong to anything else. The closet door slid open with that familiar, gritty sound. The air inside was cold enough to sting my cheeks. I knelt, reached in, and grabbed a box from the back corner. As my hand brushed the back wall, that humming vibration was there again. Faint, like a living thing breathing through drywall. I jerked back. The closet door slid shut behind me. Not slamming, sliding. Quiet. I spun and grabbed the edge to open it. It wouldn't move. I pulled harder. The door was stuck like it had been wedged from the inside. My heart started pounding. I grabbed the handle, yanked, tried to force it open. Nothing. Then I realized the smell was thick in the closet now. Damp cloth and metal, so strong it made my eyes water. And from inside the closet, behind the door, I heard the breathing. Right there. Not in the walls. In the closet. Inhale. Exhale. The door began to move. Not opening, pressing outward. Bulging slightly, as if something behind it leaned forward. The cheap door flexed with pressure. I stumbled backward, hitting the dresser. The bulge increased. The closet door bowed outward like a lung filling. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. The door bowed again, stronger, then released. Like whatever was behind it was testing the material, learning how much it would give. Then from behind the door came a sound I will never forget. A soft, wet cough. Not like a person coughing loudly, like someone trying to cough quietly and failing. Then a small handprint appeared on the outside of the closet door. Not a stain, not grease. A clear impression pressed outward, fingers splayed, as if something inside had placed its palm against the door. The fingers were too small. I backed away until I hit the wall. The handprint slid downward slowly, dragging along the door as if whatever was behind it was lowering itself, leaving a faint streak of moisture. The closet door flexed inward and outward again, like breathing. I couldn't move. My legs felt locked. My brain was screaming at me to run, but my body stayed because it needed proof. The door bulged one last time, then suddenly relaxed, and the closet door slid open. Not fast, smooth, controlled. The opening revealed the inside of the closet, my hanging clothes, the boxes, the vacuum. Normal. Except the back wall of the closet. The back wall had a shape pressed into it. Not a hole, not damage. A deep, human-shaped depression in the drywall. like someone had leaned into it hard enough to leave their outline. Head, shoulders, arms down the sides, like a body had been pushed flat into the wall, pressed into the drywall like wet cement. I stared at it, unable to breathe. Then the outline shifted. Not the wall settling. The depression moved, as if the body inside the wall was turning. A shoulder rose, the head shape slid slightly, and from the depression, a hand shape pushed outward, like fingers trying to crawl through from the other side. The drywall cracked softly. A fine spiderweb of fractures spread around the hand. I screamed then. Real, ugly scream. I ran downstairs, nearly falling on the steps, and I slammed the bathroom door behind me like a child. I sat on the floor shaking, hugging my knees, listening. Nothing followed. No footsteps. No pounding. Just silence, and the faint sense that the house was listening too. After a few minutes, I forced myself to stand and leave the bathroom. I grabbed my coat, boots, keys. The storm outside was still heavy. The driveway was a white slope. I didn't care. I ran outside into snow up to my ankles and slipped down the walkway, heart hammering, trying not to fall. I got in my car and turned the key. The engine struggled, then caught. As the heater began to blow cold air, I sat there trembling, watching my front door. I waited for something to appear in the window, a shape, a movement. Nothing. Then, very softly, through the closed windows of my car, I heard it. From inside the house. A slow inhale, a slow exhale, as if the house itself was breathing. I drove to a hotel and stayed there that night without unpacking. I slept with the lights on. I stared at the closet in that hotel room like it was an enemy. The next morning, when I returned to my townhouse in daylight, the storm had eased. Snow lay in clean drifts. Everything looked harmless. I went upstairs, heart pounding, and stood in front of the closet. The door was slightly open, a thin crack of darkness. I didn't touch it. I didn't go near it. I looked past it, into the closet, toward the back wall. The drywall depression was gone. The wall looked normal, no cracks, no handprint. But on the carpet in front of the closet was a damp streak, like something wet had been dragged out and then stopped. And the smell was faint again. Damp cloth. Pennies. I moved out within 2 weeks. I told my landlord there was mold in the walls, that I'd been having headaches, that I couldn't stay. He argued about the lease. I paid the penalty because I didn't have the energy to fight. When the movers came, I told them to leave the closet door shut. I told them the track was broken. I lied. I left a lot behind. Not because I couldn't afford to move it, but because I couldn't bring myself to open that door again. I thought leaving would end it. That's what people say. Just move, just leave. But I learned something in those last days in the townhouse. It wasn't trapped in the closet. It was using the closet. It was learning what doors do. It was learning what I do when doors move. 2 months later, I was in my new apartment. Different building, different part of town. No shared walls with townhouses, no second-floor bedroom. One evening, I was putting away laundry in the hall closet. A normal, boring task that should have been safe. I slid the closet door shut. It didn't latch properly. It stayed cracked open by half an inch. I stared at it, my heart beginning to race, and I whispered, "No." The closet door moved. Not opening, not closing. It pulsed outward slightly, like something behind it took a slow inhale. Then it relaxed, like an exhale. And in that crack of darkness, I caught the faintest smell of damp cloth and cold pennies. I didn't open it. I stepped back, turned off the light, and left the room. Because I finally understood that it didn't need one specific closet or one specific house. It only needed a door and time. The first time my own voice came from the other side of the pantry door, I was holding a knife. Not because I was brave, because I was making dinner and my hands were already full and my brain hadn't caught up yet. I'd been chopping onions at the counter when I heard it. My exact tone, my exact pace, say my name like I'd called myself from the hallway. It came from inside the pantry. Soft, close, patient. And the worst part wasn't the voice. It was the pause afterward. Like whoever used my voice knew exactly how long I'd need to stand there frozen before I broke and opened the door. I didn't open it. I stood there in the yellow kitchen light, knife held in front of me like it mattered, listening to my own breath and the quiet creaks of winter settling into an old house. Then the pantry door handle turned, slowly, like someone testing it from the inside. My house is a single-story ranch on the edge of a small town in northern Colorado. Not rural, not farm country, just that place where subdivisions thin out and the streets stop having sidewalks, where the wind has more room to move and the night feels bigger. It's not a haunted-looking house. That's the thing. It's not a cabin in the woods or a decaying mansion with ivy. It's beige siding and a low roof and a simple front porch that's too narrow for more than 2 chairs. I bought it because I wanted a place that felt stable. I wanted walls that were mine, a mortgage that made sense, a neighborhood that went quiet by 9. It had one feature I loved immediately. A deep pantry built into the kitchen wall with a heavy wooden door and old brass knob that clicked when you turned it. It was the kind of pantry you don't see much in newer builds. Sturdy, practical, a place for jars and cans and winter storage. In December, pantries matter. You stock up, you plan for storms, you keep extra in case the roads get bad. I liked that feeling, being prepared. The pantry became important in a way I didn't understand until it was too late. The first few weeks in the house were normal. Cold, but normal. The kind of cold that makes you run your hand along the inside of windows to feel the chill. The kind of cold that makes your floorboards snap softly at night. I moved in late October. By Thanksgiving, I had the living room set up. A couch, a rug, a lamp that made warm circles on the walls. Christmas decorations stayed in boxes because I hadn't felt festive, but I still bought a small wreath for the front door because routine matters. I live alone. I didn't think that would matter much. I've lived alone before. I like the quiet. I like not having to share space. I like the feeling that everything in my home stays exactly where I put it. That last part is what started to break first. It began with the pantry shelf. I keep things in a specific order. Canned goods on the middle shelves, pasta and rice above, baking stuff on the bottom because it's heavier. I'm not obsessive, but I'm consistent. Consistency is a way of keeping your world predictable. One evening in early December, I opened the pantry to grab a can of tomatoes and saw that my flour bag was sitting on the top shelf. I don't put flour up high. Ever. It's heavy and the bag always puffs a little when you pick it up. It's a mess if you drop it. I keep it low. I stared at it, irritated, and tried to remember if I'd reorganized the night before. I hadn't. I moved it back to the lower shelf and shut the door. The next day, the sugar was on the top shelf. The day after that, a jar of peanut butter I kept near the front was pushed all the way to the back, like someone had slid it as far away from reach as possible. I told myself I was distracted. I told myself moving boxes around had scrambled my habits. I told myself anything that kept my nerves from tightening. Then I noticed the knob. The brass knob on the pantry door had a habit of sitting slightly crooked when you let it go, like it didn't fully return to center. I assumed it was just old hardware. But after a while, I started seeing it turned fully to the right, held in the open position, as if someone had just twisted it and paused. I'd come into the kitchen in the morning, coffee in hand, and see the pantry knob turned. Not open, not swinging, just turned. And when I turned it back, it would click softly and return to neutral, like nothing was wrong. The first time I felt real fear was when I opened the pantry and smelled damp fabric. Not food, not spices. Damp cloth. Cold pennies. That metallic smell, like you've held change too long in your palm. It hit me so suddenly I backed away. I stood there, staring into the pantry, trying to place the smell. I thought of basements, old laundry, wet coats. There were no wet coats in the pantry. There was nothing in there that should smell like that. I shut the door and opened it again, thinking maybe the smell was coming from somewhere else. Maybe the sink, maybe the trash. The smell was stronger when the pantry opened, like it lived inside. I shut it again, hard. The click of the latch sounded louder than usual. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of something shifting in the kitchen. Not footsteps, not a crash. A soft scrape, like cardboard sliding on wood. I lay in bed listening, heart tapping lightly, telling myself it was the house settling. Then I heard the pantry door. Not opening, just a small movement, a subtle click, like the knob turning slightly and releasing. I sat up in bed, staring into the dark hallway. My bedroom is down a short corridor. From my bed, I can see the living room doorway and beyond it, a slice of the kitchen entrance. Not the pantry itself, just the edge of the kitchen where light would be if a light were on. Everything was dark. I held my breath and listened. A slow inhale, a slow exhale. Not in my room, not in the hallway, from the kitchen. It was quiet, controlled breathing, the kind you hear when someone is trying not to be noticed. I froze, every part of me going still in that instinctive way animals do when they sense danger. The breathing stopped. The silence after felt like someone had stepped closer. I didn't get up. I didn't check. I stayed in bed with my eyes open until dawn smeared light across the hallway and I could finally move again. In the morning, I walked into the kitchen with my heart already racing. The pantry door was open an inch, just enough to show darkness inside. I stood there staring at it. The house was warm. The heater had been running. The kitchen should have smelled like coffee and clean air. But from that thin crack came damp cloth and cold metal. I walked up slowly and put my fingers on the pantry door edge. The wood felt colder than the rest of the kitchen. Not just slightly cooler, cold, like it had been outside. I pushed it open. Inside, the shelves looked normal, but on the floor of the pantry there was a damp footprint. One. Bare. A clear toe shape, a heel, like someone had stepped in melted snow and then stepped onto the pantry floor. There were no other prints, no trail, just that one footprint, as if someone had appeared in the pantry for a single step and then vanished. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Then I did something stupid. I crouched down and touched it. The wood floor was wet and cold enough to sting my fingertip. I stood up too fast and hit my shoulder on the pantry frame. I backed out, shut the pantry, and locked it. Yes, locked it. There's a small latch on the pantry door, a simple old latch that I'd never used before. It's probably meant to keep little kids out. I slid it into place with shaking hands. Then I stood there in my kitchen and tried to think like a sane person. Maybe an animal got in. Maybe something died back there. Maybe moisture from something spilled. Maybe... My brain kept offering explanations that didn't fit, and the more I rejected them, the more terrified I became. For a week after that, I didn't open the pantry. I lived like a person with a missing tooth, always aware of the absence, always poking at it with my tongue even when I tried not to. I kept food in cabinets. I left pantry items on the counter. I told myself I was being practical. At night, I started hearing the latch, a tiny metallic sound like it was being tested from the inside. Sometimes in the middle of a quiet evening, I'd hear it click faintly and then stop. No door movement, no crash, just a test, like a hand learning how much force it would take. Then came the voice. It happened on a Sunday afternoon in mid-December. Snow had fallen the night before, and the world outside looked clean and harmless. The kind of day that makes you feel safe because everything is bright. I was making soup. The kitchen was warm. The window above the sink was fogged from steam. I was relaxed enough to forget the pantry for a few minutes. Then I heard my voice say my name, softly, from inside the pantry door. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't muffled like someone calling through a wall. It was close, immediate, like the sound was coming from the same air I was breathing. I froze with a ladle in my hand. There was a pause, then my voice again, more insistent, as if I'd just called myself and wanted an answer. I whispered, "What?" There was silence. Then the pantry latch clicked. Slow. A careful movement, like fingers sliding metal gently to avoid noise. I dropped the ladle. It clattered against the pot. The latch did not open. It didn't fully slide free. It just moved enough to tell me something behind the door could touch it. My skin went cold. I backed away until I hit the counter, and then the pantry knob turned. Not jerking, not rattling, turned smoothly to the right, held there, as if someone inside had their hand on it and was waiting. I couldn't breathe. My eyes burned. My brain screamed at me not to open it, not to look, not to give it what it wanted. I held my knife because it was there, not because it would help. And then I heard my own voice again, barely audible, like a whisper close to the door. "Open it." That was the first time I felt true panic. Not fear. Panic is different. Fear makes you cautious. Panic makes you stupid. I did not open the pantry. But I did something else. I ran to the front door and stepped outside into the cold air like I could escape my own house by standing on the porch. I stood there, shaking, breathing in freezing air until my lungs hurt. Then I went back inside and stood in the kitchen doorway, staring at the pantry from a distance like it was a wild animal. The knob was neutral again. The latch was locked again. The house smelled normal. I didn't feel normal. From that point on, my routine started shrinking. I stopped cooking as much. I ate simple things. I avoided spending time in the kitchen unless I had to. But the kitchen is the center of a house. You can't avoid it forever. Christmas came. I put up a small tree in the living room because I couldn't stand the emptiness. I wrapped gifts for family and mailed them out. I tried to fake being a normal person living a normal winter. The pantry stayed locked. The voice didn't come back for a while, but the presence did. It started with pressure. I'd be sitting on the couch and feel the air change, like someone had walked into the room behind me. Not footsteps, not sound, just that pressure shift that makes you instinctively glance over your shoulder. When I turned, nothing. But the kitchen would feel colder. The pantry door would be slightly open, even with the latch locked. I'd find it cracked an inch, the latch still engaged, like the door had flexed around it. The smell would drift out, damp and metallic. And from inside, sometimes, I'd hear a faint little sound, like the soft shuffle of something moving among the shelves. One night during a heavy snowstorm, the power flickered. I'm not talking about a full outage, just a quick blink. Lights dimmed, then came back. In that blink of darkness, I heard my voice again, clearer than ever. "Don't look." It came from behind me, not the pantry, behind me in the living room. I spun so fast I made myself dizzy. No one there. The house was lit again, the Christmas tree lights twinkling, the room warm. But the kitchen doorway looked darker than it should have, like the shadows had thickened. I stood there, shaking, and from the kitchen, I heard the pantry door slide open fully. The sound of it was loud and final. Wood scraping slightly on wood, the click of the latch giving way. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I listened. From inside the pantry came a slow inhale, a slow exhale. Then my voice, quiet, conversational, like someone trying to sound casual. "It's cold in here." I whispered, "Stop." The breathing stopped instantly. A moment later, the pantry door slid shut by itself. The latch clicked back into place, like it was showing me it could open whenever it wanted and close whenever it wanted. January arrived with deep cold, the kind of cold that makes the air feel brittle. That month, I started sleeping badly, not because of nightmares, but because of listening. Once you've heard something in your house that shouldn't exist, you start listening for it constantly. Silence becomes suspicious. Small noises become threats. I started finding tiny changes in the kitchen each morning. A spoon on the counter that I knew I'd put in the drawer. A cabinet slightly open. The dish towel moved. Then I found flour on the floor, not spilled. A thin line, like someone had dragged a fingertip through flour and drawn a path from the pantry door to the center of the kitchen. It stopped there. No message, no shape, just a line, like a boundary. I swept it up and told myself I was being dramatic. The next morning, the line was back. Thicker, as if more flour had been used. And this time, there were faint footprints in it. Tiny toe marks, like a bare foot had stepped lightly and then lifted without leaving a full print. I stared at those marks until my eyes watered. Then I did the worst thing you can do in a situation like this. I talked to it. I stood in my kitchen, hands shaking, and said out loud, "What do you want?" Silence. I waited, heart hammering. Then from behind the pantry door, my voice answered, "I want to come out." My stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. I backed away. The pantry knob turned slowly. The latch slid, but not fully. A careful movement, like someone testing whether I'd rush forward or run. I whispered, "No." My voice from behind the door whispered back, perfectly matching my tone, "No." Then it laughed. Not a big laugh, a tiny, breathy chuckle, like someone learning how laughter works and trying it out. My skin crawled. That was when I realized this wasn't just a haunting in the abstract sense. It was something studying me, studying my voice, studying how I reacted, what words I used, how quickly fear made me move. It had patience. Weeks went by like that, small escalations, each one pushing a little further. The pantry door would be open when I woke up, even locked. The smell would seep into the living room. The voice would come at random moments, always using my own words. If I said, "Stop," it would say, "Stop." If I whispered, "No," it would whisper, "No." Once, while I was brushing my teeth, I heard my voice call from the kitchen, "Come here." It sounded exactly like the way I call myself when I remember something I forgot. Like I'd just realized I'd left the stove on. I ran into the kitchen without thinking, heart pounding. The pantry door was open a crack. The smell hit me. And from inside, my voice said softly, "Good." That word stayed with me for days, not because it was scary in itself, but because it implied a plan, like it was training me. The breaking point came in late January during a night when the wind was so strong it made the house sigh. Snow was piled against the porch. I'd spent the whole day inside, feeling trapped. That evening, I decided to confront the pantry. Not because I was brave, because I was exhausted. Because living like this was making me feel like I was disappearing. I stood in front of the pantry door with the overhead kitchen light on. I could smell damp cloth faintly, even through the wood. I put my hand on the knob. It was cold. Colder than any metal in the kitchen should have been. I swallowed and said, "If you're in there, I'm not afraid." That was a lie. My knees were shaking. From behind the door, my voice whispered, "You are." The knob turned under my hand. Not me. It turned on its own, slowly, like fingers closing around it with mine. I jerked my hand back and stumbled away. The pantry door swung open. Fully. The shelves were visible, cans, jars, boxes. Normal. Except the back wall. The back wall of the pantry was wet. Not damp from humidity. Wet like condensation on a cold window, beading and running in thin streams. And in the center of that wet wall, there was a shape. A darker patch, like a person-sized outline where the wetness was thicker, as if something had been standing pressed against it from the other side. My throat tightened. The outline shifted, slowly. Not like a shadow moving with light, like a body moving in real time. I froze. Then, from inside the pantry, from that wet darkness, a hand emerged. Not through a hole, not breaking drywall. It came out of the air itself, pale and small, as if the pantry space was deeper than it should be, and something inside it could reach into my kitchen. The fingers were long, wrongly, delicate. The hand reached toward the shelf, toward the cans. It touched one can and pushed it gently aside. Then another, like it was searching. The sound of cans moving was soft but impossibly loud in my ears. I backed away, mouth open, unable to form words. The hand stopped. Then it turned palm up, like it wanted something placed in it. From behind me, from the hallway, my voice whispered, "Give me your hand." I spun, and in that half-second of movement, my brain made a decision for me. I ran. I ran out the front door into snow without a coat, without boots, without keys in my hand, just pure animal panic. The cold stabbed my feet. Snow soaked my socks. I barely felt it. I ran to my car and yanked at the door. Locked. Keys inside. I turned and looked at my house. The front porch light was on, warm and normal. Then, through the front window, I saw the kitchen. The pantry door was still open, and in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, I saw a shape standing where I should have been. Not clear, not detailed, but the outline of a person. My height, my build, and it lifted its head slightly, like it was listening. Then my voice came through the glass, muffled but unmistakable. "Come back in!" I stumbled backward in the snow and nearly fell. The figure in the window didn't move toward the door. It stayed there, waiting, like it knew I couldn't stay outside forever. I don't remember deciding what to do. I think survival instinct took over. I ran to my neighbor's house, 2 doors down, pounding on the door with numb fists until an older man opened it, startled. I must have looked insane. Bare feet in snow, shaking, eyes wild. He pulled me inside without asking questions and handed me a blanket. He asked if someone was in my house. I couldn't explain. I couldn't say, "My pantry is making my voice." I just said, "I need help. I need someone to come with me." He called his wife, called another neighbor. Within 10 minutes, 2 men and a woman were standing in my living room while I huddled under a blanket, trying to look normal. They walked through my house with heavy footsteps, checking rooms, checking closets. When they reached the kitchen, the pantry door was closed. The latch was locked. The smell was gone. Everything looked perfectly normal. One of the men looked at me gently, like he was trying to be kind, and said, "Maybe you got spooked. Storms got everyone on edge." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, because what else could I do? After they left, I stood alone in my kitchen staring at the pantry. My house felt violated in a way I couldn't prove. That's the worst kind. The kind that isolates you. I didn't sleep there that night. I stayed with my neighbor's family, embarrassed and shaken. The next day, I went home in daylight and packed a bag. I didn't have a plan to move immediately. Leases and mortgages don't care about hauntings. But I knew I couldn't sleep in that house again with that pantry inside it. Before I left, I did one last stupid thing. I stood in front of the pantry and said quietly, "Why me?" There was silence for a long moment. Then, from behind the pantry door, my voice answered, not matching my tone this time, but slightly wrong, like it was still practicing. "Because you listen." That was the last clear sentence it ever gave me. I moved out in early February. I told people I had a mold issue. I used the word everyone accepts because it makes sense and doesn't invite questions. I left the pantry stocked. I left the cans. I left the jars. I left the flour. I didn't go back in there to clean it out. I couldn't. The house sold quickly after I put it on the market. Someone else wanted stability. In the final walkthrough, the pantry door was closed. The latch was locked. The brass knob sat neutral and innocent. I stood there with the realtor talking about paperwork and closing dates, and I stared at that door like it was a mouth. On my way out, I thought I heard my voice whisper my name one last time. Not from the pantry, from somewhere in the kitchen air, soft, patient, as if it didn't matter who owned the house, as if it only needed a quiet person, a person who listened. I didn't turn around, and I didn't answer.